And so I do have some concerns, but first I do want to thank you for one thing. You incorporated, we had this thing about 4 times last session in different special sessions, and we had a conflict of interest provision that no elected official would be able to utilize this, no state senator, no state representative would be able to use this for their own children or their grandchildren, and you incorporated that into the bill, correct?
That's correct, Senator Gutierrez. It's consistent among the members that they want the recipients, those that need help the most, to be the first eligible, first in line.
Yeah, well, that was a good amendment, I thought, so thank you for putting it in there. But I'm not quite done. I have a few questions that we've prepared prior to this, but as I listen to some of the rollout that we've heard, I have other questions. And so I'm going to start here from Senator Hall's questioning of you, where he said that there would be no strings passed on to private schools. And you indeed confirmed that, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you also said something, and I want to be very clear that this is a fact, that this statement is, I don't know if you said it was something about a poll, that people, that private schools are safer, or that there's a perception that they're safer. Which one of those things did you say? I want to be very clear.
I could use either reference, Senator Gutierrez. It was polling that came from families in Wisconsin talking about their use of an expanded school choice program and their experiences from public school and private school, which part of it had to do with violence in the public school, but other parts of it had to do with civic engagement, a learning environment that was, free from disruption. It had to do with one-on-one teacher supports. It had to do with the availability of services. So across the board, the feedback in the polling was that families indicated a better experience, and that's just one poll. So I'm referencing that because it's positive, and it was relevant to Senator Hall's comments.
And you suggested that some of the reasons were for safety. You mentioned fentanyl,
yes.
One-on-one teaching,
Yeah.
School shootings. We've talked about that in the past, right? There's this perception.
Gun violence and fear from that. One of the schools reported in Wisconsin, one of the public schools, led all schools in the state on the number of students that had brought a firearm to school.
The Tennessee school, the Episcopalian school, where 3 children were shot dead, that was a private school, right?
That's right.
So you have no evidence one way or another that private schools are safer, more safe than public schools. No evidence, correct?
Just family feedback. That could be, inaccurate feedback. They could not be telling the truth. I'm just reporting on studies that are well documented, confirmed, and published.
So let me go back to the no strings attached piece. We all know last session I was focused probably singularly on Uvalde, and it had a significant effect on those families for certain.
Yes.
And I think on a lot of us in the state of Texas. We felt it impacted in a real way. So much so that this legislature, this Senate, appropriated more money than we ever have appropriated ever to school safety.
That's correct.
Over $100 million. Are my numbers correct?
That's correct.
And part of that was funding the School Safety Commission. Is that accurate?
That's right.
Okay, and in the School Safety Commission, that's a commission that is there to ensure that our public schools are providing high measures of school safety, windows, doors, locks, emergency mechanisms to call the police and so on and so forth. And of course, keeping the audits of our public schools to ensure that they are providing those types of safety measures, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. And yet, in the no strings attached portion of your back and forth between you and Senator Hall, public schools will not be required in any way to comply with any part of the School Safety Commission's audits, findings, investigations, research, inspectors. In other words, they will not be inspected by the School Safety Commission at all, correct?
No, they'll have to commission their own inspections, and they will be responsible for keeping their own campuses safe.
Is that in the bill?
It's not in the bill, which keeps it status quo, that they have to do what they continue to do now.
So are you suggesting, because you're not suggesting to us that they're safer than public schools. We've already determined that. We've said that that's a poll in Wisconsin, that people perceive them to be safer. So, and we know that school shootings happen in private schools as well, because we've seen it in Tennessee twice in private schools. And so you're suggesting to us that these private schools do not have to comply with anything that is a prerequisite of the School Safety Commission that we dropped over $100 million to ensure that our children were kept safe.
That's correct, and there will be 11,000 other bills filed this session before the end of the day and the filing deadline, and that could certainly be one of them, but no, it's not in the ESA bill. I mentioned the Wisconsin study, but I wasn't excluding others. We have 8 different studies across the country examining educational school choices' impact on school climate, safety. 8 found positive outcomes. That's 8 out of 8. I mentioned the Milwaukee program findings where there were 56% fewer drug convictions amongst school choice ESA recipients in a private school experience. There were 86% fewer property damage convictions, and there are a total of 100% positive outcomes for those studies on students feeling safer overall.
Yeah, I'm not trying to conflate two things, and I appreciate your ability, and that's what you want to respond to and so on. I don't even know what you just said, to be honest with you.
8 out of 8 studies say students feel safer in a private school with an ESA.
All right, fair enough. And you just said before that there could be some other bill that would require these ESA schools to be subject to the School Safety Commission. Why not put it in this bill?
Senator Gutierrez, with all the work we've done over the years, we haven't had in all the testimony in our committee process concerns presented about the need to place additional safety requirements on a private school with a private school budget. So because that private school has to come up with its own funding and it has its own board, they have to make decisions based on their safety for their campus, just like many other components that we're not delving into in this bill on their behalf.
But now we have public school funding towards those private schools, and you're saying that they are not subject to the same requirements, no strings attached, like you said earlier, and therefore these kids that are using public school money in our private schools now are somehow less safer, even though you want to tell us that they're more safe. I get it, by some virtue of some polls and whatnot. But you don't want those private school kids that are using public school funding to be as safe as the kid in the public school down the road, because you don't want them to be subject to the School Safety Commission.
Yeah, Senator Gutierrez, I want every student in Texas to be safe, but just as you and I have joined together to vote for Texas equalization grants that allow private schools to be the beneficiary of a public school student using tax money, Texas taxpayer dollars, to end up at that private school, TCU, Baylor, whatever the private university might be. We have not, as we've joined together to vote together on that tax money being used by a public school student in a private school setting, we have never placed any safety requirements on those private universities. I don't think you have that bill this session.
I'm glad that you mentioned Texas equalization grants, and we'll get to that down the road. You know that I represent about 16 counties, the vast majority of them rural, correct?
That's right.
I don't want to conflate or misrepresent your bill one way or another. And so when people say, oh, this benefits 100,000 kids, it might be a little bit more than that, right? Because you've got this $2,000 for the homeschool kids, so we get a few more kids.
That's right.
So give or take, not take, but 100,000 plus kids. Is that fair?
That's right.
Okay. And we got 5.1 million kids in our school system, correct?
North of that.
North of that.
Close to 5.3, 5.4, yeah.
5.3, 5.4. But 100,000 or so lucky ones. Is that right?
Senator Gutierrez, if you want to expand the plan from $1 billion to more than that to cover more students, I have not seen that amendment up to this point, but we're launching a plan that Arizona started with 300 students, Florida started with 17,000 students, and we're starting with 100,000 students. So yes, in a lottery situation weighted towards the disabled and low income, I'm thinking it is fair.
Well, hell, let's do it for all the students then. Let's give everybody in Texas. Let's vote on that right now.
That would be a $53 billion one-year expenditure, so we have to do some planning as appropriators. I think it's probably more responsible to launch a plan with a best in practices in the nation framework like we have today, and then weigh the success of the plan on behalf of these students, and then accept your amendment if you so choose to have it apply to 5.3 or 4 million students. That's not my bill.
Well, okay. Well, let's talk about your committee structure and what's it called. Now you've changed the name. The name has been changed now to K through 12, right?
K through 16.
K through 16.
Yes.
There you go. Thank you.
It's the combination of higher ed and K through 12 together, as we did last session.
Right. And I'm not suggesting that you're being disingenuous. I just want to go through some facts and some bill analysis questions.
Okay.
A whole bunch of people want to ask questions. I don't want to take too much of your time. How many students are estimated by TEA to leave public schools for private schools in fiscal year 2027?
One more time, I'm sorry.
Under the bill analysis, how many students are estimated by TEA to leave the public schools for the private schools in 2027?
Well, at capacity maximum, this legislation would serve 100,000 students out of, let's say it's 5.3 million public school students. It'd be 100,000 served. That would be 1.7, 1.8%, which again is why I don't understand why our public schools would even have concerns over a program that helps 1.7%, 1.8% of all public school students.
Well, I promise you, my rural constituents, Republicans, Democrats, have real big problems with this bill because they don't have private schools in their counties.
Nationally,
rural Texas gets screwed on this deal.
Not at all. It's actually a rural Texas bill. And in the state of Florida, private school opportunities increased 74% over 10 years in Florida, in rural Florida.
It's a rural Texas bill. I'll let you go. I'll take you down to my counties, and you can go talk to my county judges.
I'll be happy to. I need the invitation.
You can tell them how this
I'm just working off the data.
You can tell them how this is a rural Texas bill.
There's a perception because we don't have it. There's data across the nation over decades and decades that's irrefutable.
Yeah, I don't want to speak over you, so I appreciate the same not being done to me.
Absolutely respect your line of questioning. I'll defer and yield.
My question was, in 2027, how many students does TEA suggest will leave for private schools in fiscal year 2027 from the public schools to the private schools? More specifically, what's capacity in 2027? How many seats available for these first tier, the 80% tier? It's on the bill analysis, page 3.
I don't have those numbers. I just gave you a maximum. The maximum is 1.8% of all public school students could be served.
All right. Here's my question. TEA, the Texas Education Agency, says there's 24,500 seats available in fiscal year 2027. 24,500 seats.
In private schools?
Available in the private schools in the year 2027. Do you have any?
We show 74,000 in our data.
Okay. On page 3 of the bill analysis, sir, it says, it assumes that 24,500 students would leave public schools for private schools in 2027. That's what the bill analysis says.
Okay.
Is there any reason for me to be wrong here on what the bill analysis says?
The testimony in committee from private schools across Texas is triple that. So through TEPSAC, we have data through our committee hearings in 25 and back in 23 talking about 74,000 open seats and tens of millions of dollars in philanthropy for scholarships.
Well, I don't know about those other agencies, but TEA, the Texas Education Agency,
yes,
appointed chairman, the commissioner appointed by Greg Abbott, the Republican governor, says it's 24,500 seats available in 2027, increasing to 98,000 in fiscal year 2030. Is there any reason to suggest that they don't know what they're talking about here?
Yes, it's inconsistent with the data from the actual private schools that offer the seats. So instead of the Texas Education Agency's extrapolation on that, I would defer to the data offered by the private schools themselves.
Okay, so you want us to believe, because we get a bill analysis from Ledge Council, correct?
Correct.
And they go to agencies and everybody comes in and they find out how to be able to do this bill analysis, because what's in the bill analysis supposedly are facts and not innuendo, not the testimony of some witness that might benefit from this thing. This is what TEA is saying, and that's all I want to know.
And I feel for you on the validity and veracity of the data. For instance, we had an LBB report that this bill would cost billions and billions of dollars and would grow at 20% out to 2029. We don't have anything in the bill that grows the number of students served or appropriates any additional dollars than $1 billion. So from the LBB to your information in the bill analysis, Senator Gutierrez, they may just be lacking information.
Okay, so the TEA in the bill analysis that each senator has before them suggests 24,500 seats. You disagree with that because your testimony, your witnesses, your quite frankly partial witnesses say otherwise. And so let's just go with the bill analysis numbers that have been reflected in my line of questioning.
Go ahead.
If you fill up all of the seats in the bill analysis suggestion, 24,500 seats, that only, and let's just round up, that only makes 25% of your available approximate 100,000. I say approximate because there might be a few more. We've already discussed that. Is that fair?
On those numbers, yes.
On those numbers, yes.
Yes.
And so therefore my question is this: what then happens if all of the seats are filled? Let's just take a different number. Let's say it's 50,000 seats are available, just for the sake of argument. Not the 80,000 that you anticipate. 50,000 seats get filled tomorrow like that. Public schools transitioning to the private schools. Now all of the seats are full. The butts are in the seats. There's no more room. What happens to the other 50%? In other words, does it escheat to the kids that are already in private school and in the home schools? In other words, do more private school kids that are already sitting in those seats get access beyond your 20% allotment?
No, I mean, to your first point on the numbers, let's answer them two different ways, right? Both great points. To your first point on the number of available seats in private schools being less than the demand of the receiving ESA recipient, we don't know yet how many applications there will be in this program. We don't know that there will be 100,000 applications. If there are, based on your hypothetical, we're not sure how many will be in a micro school. We're not sure how many will be in a home school. We don't know among the variety of choices, this is a school choice bill, how those students will request and direct their preferences for available spots and to apply the ESA dollars themselves. So if capacity is less than the demand, which very well could be the case, then there would not be seats available within those requests. There would be a no when that application comes in, just as if 100,000 ESA holders, if they all ask for a private school slot, my data shows there's 74,000 seats, not 80, but that demand could exceed supply. We just don't know what kind of applications are coming.
Okay, let's assume that capacity is 50,000 for the sake of argument. TEA says it's much, much less. I'm simply asking you then this. Your 20% universal category, which is kids already in homeschool and already in private school, correct? Is that correct?
That's correct in the 20%, yes.
Okay. And if we've attained capacity at 50,000 kids, if we've attained capacity at 50,000 kids, sir, does your 20% category automatically boom up to 50%?
Yes,
because
it could grow.
It could grow.
Yes.
That's my point.
Okay.
So
yes.
Private school kids, in your bill, you're telling all of us that 20% of the private school kids already in private school get to be able to have access to the chance are eligible to be part of this program. Of the 100,000 kids, 20% are in the universal category, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And the rest of the 80% could become part of that population as well. I mean, that's not just the 20%, but like, for instance, in committee, we had a family, a firefighter and a teacher from San Antonio, and the firefighter was killed battling a fire. That left a widow who had 2 kids, and they were doing everything they possibly could under that dual income to provide them a private school opportunity, because the test scores in the public, barely 34% were achieving grade level in every single grade. So instead of going back to the public school, that widow sold everything she had, including their home, and bought a much, much older home with 1 room to keep those 2 kids in a private school opportunity. And so they were already in a private school, and they would be part of this 20% that grows based on capacity that you're mentioning.
I don't want to overcomplicate your bill. Your bill is a complicated bill, so we have to try to simplify it in ways that people understand. The 20% universal category has no income requirement, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's clear. You could have 100,000. Well, you could be over $160,000, and you would still be able to qualify for one of these ESAs.
You could. It's poverty level up to no ceiling.
Or $1 million.
That's right.
All right. My question is, if I've reached capacity on the 50,000 seats that are available in our hypothetical, TEA says it's 25,000. You say it's 74,000. Who knows? If I reach capacity in my hypothetical at 50,000, I got 20,000 reserved for the millionaire kids, from 0 to millions. The other 30,000 kids that are already situated in that private school, they're eligible for these ESAs regardless of financial income, correct?
Yes, it's a fully universal population. It could be the lowest income to any income.
That's my point.
Yes.
Your universal population in this scenario can exceed the 20% and go to as much as 50% in this hypothetical, correct?
If there's no seats available, we know there's a tremendous number of seats available. But yes, you can build a hypothetical to show that my universal population grows. That could be a positive for many on this floor. But it's clear that the universal population is 20% of the program. 80% serves more, unless your contention is correct that there's just not enough seats available in any category.
Well, I'm not. Let me get a hold of my emotions here sometimes.
It could be a tremendous number of homeschool families. It might not be a private school issue.
I'm not making up the numbers. This is the Texas Education Agency says there's 25,000 seats available.
And I'm using the Texas Private School Association for the entire state that has better numbers than any stakeholder that could testify.
All right, so the millionaire kid, beyond the 20% threshold, you've already said yes, so I'm just kind of repeating it.
Yes.
That universal section can increase to as much as, if TEA is right, as much as 75% if TEA is correct. Is that not correct?
It's not if there are more homeschool applications than private school applications. We just don't know.
Okay.
But what other states show across 32 school choice plans in America is that the wealthiest of wealthy are not the school choice recipients being served. It is income vulnerable and special needs related students that are served the most among these plans.
Well,
that's how ours is designed. It's clearly the prioritization set to put $800 million of a $1 billion bill, 80% towards that structure to help those kids that need help the most. I understand hypotheticals, but Senator West's line of questioning was about new schools that aren't quite accredited yet popping up everywhere. So which is it? Are we going to have too much supply on the seats available? Are we going to have not enough supply? We have plenty of supply based on private school testimony. But at the end of the day, who are we fighting for? We're fighting for these students that need help the most, not designing a program to say we should kill this program because it might be some billionaire boondoggle. That is manufactured narrative at its worst.
No, it's not. These are the facts. I can tell you who you're not fighting for. It's the other 5.2 million kids. That's who you're not fighting for.
We have fiscal restraint here. We have to balance our budget. We can't appropriate a $53 billion 1 year deployment of funds for all the students that you support, and you don't have a bill to do that. So I can't genuinely think that your line of questioning is leading us towards you thinking that's a better program.
Well, my line of questioning is simply stating the facts that TEA says there's only 25,000 seats available, and so therefore your 20% universal category is not true. It'll expand to as much as 75%.
Senator Gutierrez, it's already in the bill that even if applications don't exceed available revenue, everyone that applies is admitted. So if I'm wide open and transparent about the fact that everyone is admitted if applications don't exceed available revenue, let's say there's 100,000 spots and 29,000 applications, we're launching a program to see exactly this. In Texas, who needs these opportunities the most and who will come forward and apply? It's not that we're piloting this concept for the nation. We'd be number 32. So we've got data across the country that shows all of these fear-mongering types of hypotheticals just aren't playing out in all of these 190 empirical studies I have on my desk.
Yeah, Arizona damn near bankrupted itself with
Arizona's got a budget surplus.
Yeah, damn near bankrupted himself with their ESAs.
Okay.
And so let me ask you another couple questions, and then I'll move on to so that someone else can ask their questions.
Yes.
Is it true that SB 2 allows ESAs to be used to pay tuition and fees for career-based education and for institutes of higher education?
That's correct up to grade 12.
Wait a minute. We have a lot of kids in our high schools that are taking, that's not quite accurate, sir.
Yeah, clarification, you become ineligible for the ESA when you graduate high school. So I interpret that as working on a career and certification license or taking an AP course or a dual credit course that it would apply towards a higher ed experience.
Right, because in your bill, not in the bill analysis, you have a section that one of the payees can be a higher education provider, and that's on page 6, line 29. To your point.
That's right.
Okay? Because a lot of kids are taking high school, college credits, and so on.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. We hope the most that for in-demand jobs and skills and trades and certifications, what our workforce is showing in Texas that these students and these kids could benefit from the most in getting an education and then entering the job workforce and really getting what they bargained for, getting a wage that is a generational change for their family, establishing a trade or a skill that can never be taken away from them. That's part of this plan.
You actually took my next question out of there. You said that establishing a trade or a skill, because in the program, it also provides training for industry-based credentialing, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So under your bill, ESAs can pay for college courses for those young folks that are so doing in high school. They're already doing that. And even under SB 2, ESAs can already pay for obtaining an LVN certificate, correct?
Yes.
Or some other permit or license.
That's right. Yeah, there are amendments coming, Senator Gutierrez, that will clarify those in-demand jobs. You picked a good one when you just mentioned that one, but that will choose a list of in-demand jobs and skills that these programs can work towards.
Well, I look forward to visiting a little bit when we file our amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Senator Gutierrez. I appreciate the commentary and discussion.
Yep. Thank you.
Senator Colcourse, for what purpose?
To ask the author some questions.
Senator Creighton, do you yield for questions?
I yield. Of course I do.
Senator, you and I have had a lot of discussion about this bill.
Yes.
We did, 2 years ago. I don't know, we've passed this bill in different iterations through special sessions, regular sessions, and here we find ourselves again, right?
Yes. Passed it 4 times in 2023.
4 times. Always a separate funding bill from this. In the Senate, we've always done it